Welcome to episode 62 of the Grace Shepherds Memo. I'm Pastor David. Last night, for the first time in around 84 days, Anchored as a whole group was able to get together, and it was a joy to behold. We had more students than I've ever seen on a Thursday night, 32 students, 34, including 2 guests. That is just a crazy number. I think we were at 10 students when I first came, so that was really exciting. It was a good thing we were in the sanctuary, because I'm not sure if we could have fit in the Cornerstone room. Now that we come to the end of this whole quarantine process, or at least what appears to be the end of it, I am so encouraged by the love and the desire of the church to get back together. And it's made me think a little bit about loneliness and kind of that idea from Genesis 2 of how it truly is not good for us to be alone. We feel that personally in us. We don't want to be alone. We want to be with other people, particularly if you're in the local church, you want to be with other Christians. And that's exciting to be a part of right now. I was reading a book that contained this quote. I haven't read this book, but I found this quote very interesting from Dietrich Bonhoeffer in Life Together. He says this about loneliness. Sin demands to have a man by himself. It will draw him from the community. The more isolated a person is, the more extractive will be the power of sin over him, and the more deeply he becomes involved in it, the more disastrous is his isolation. That is a good word for us as we come out of kind of this quarantine process, to think about how much we need other people. And it's easy now, but let's strive to always maintain this commitment and this desire to be with other believers in particular. When I read that quote, I thought of, obviously Genesis 2, but then 1 John 1:5 says this is the message we have heard from him and proclaimed to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. And then in verse 6 it says, if we say we have fellowship with him while we walk in the darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin. It's interesting, the one there in verse 6 who claims to have fellowship with God, but still walks in sin, is only claiming to have fellowship with God. But down there in verse 7, the person who walks in the light has fellowship with a community. We have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus cleanses us from all sin. And going back to the Bonhoeffer quote, it is indeed an aspect of sin that I've found in my life, that sin wants me to be alone. Sin wants me to be isolated. Sin wants me to be separated. And there is this aspect of a community that doesn't maybe vaccinate us from sin or temptation, but it is kind of a refuge and a strength and a sweet balm. I remember as a single man, just the great encouragement being part of a family for a night could be to me. The great encouragement of being a member of something could bring in those days was it just blew my mind away. I'd go home to my dorm and I'd write in my journal for hours, but you didn't want to hear that. I didn't say that. But that is my encouragement to you in these next coming days. It's exciting to be together, and there's a reason for that. We, as people made in the image of God, were not meant to be alone. And as believers, it is dangerous and deadly spiritually to us to be alone. That's all for today. I hope to see you again next week for another Grace Shepherds Memo.